leadership, best practices in stressful times, preparing for reopening. So some of you may have reopened, some of you may be preparing, some of you may be as lost as most of us out there. So we have a great speaker today to help you connect. But before we go there, I'd like to introduce Paul Markle, our new interim executive director at the Chamber. Morning, Paul.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Todd. Good morning, Sue. Thank you again for joining us. I'm looking forward to this. Had a few requests for more mental health related things. So we're looking for good content. So we appreciate you being here today. I'm back in the Chamber office. So we're slowly beginning this reopening process, and it's a good thing for everybody, I guess, when you start to see people jumping back into their normal seat. But I'm looking forward to what you have today, because I'm certainly feeling a little stressed.
All right, thanks, Paul. So with each phase of reopening slowly coming into play, business owners and their employees may be experiencing new challenges and anxieties as they race to put everything in place and get their business storefronts up and running once again. This morning's workshop will help you and your team better manage their stress through these trying times as you prepare to reopen. Our speaker will be touching on self-care, communication, stability, and 2 areas of psychological health and safety standards. So I'm going to introduce our speaker now. This morning, our speaker is Sue Carr. Sue is President and CEO of Community Health Consulting. Sue has nearly 30 years of experience working in the fields of mental health and palliative care, with the majority of that time in senior management. Recently, Sue has transitioned from executive director in the healthcare sector to running her own business. Her passion to assist organizations to help them understand the root causes of workplace within their teams to increase efficiency and staff retention. Much of this work is done using horses as co-facilitators. Yes, that's correct, horses. I had to read that a few times myself. I'm thinking, was somebody joshing me here and going to make me look bad? It's easy enough for them to do that. Anyways, after Sue's presentation, we'll have a Q&A area. To submit a question, please click on the Q&A button and type out your question. I will read them out to our speaker for a response. And with that, good morning, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to speaking. I'm very excited about being able to share some information with you, and I hope that I expect that what I have to say is going to resonate with a lot of you, and hopefully you'll be able to envision how it can be useful in your own organizations. So as Todd mentioned, I have a number of years of experience working in healthcare situations, or healthcare settings, which is a very stressful occupations to be in. So when I was through organizational restructuring, when I was, as I like to refer to it, employment liberated, I began to follow my passion, which is helping organizations be as successful as they can and support keeping their best staff teams and keeping the best people. So I work through psychological health and safety standards, workplace stress, compassion fatigue, and I help teams build the soft skills that they need to be successful in today's environment and build resiliency. So today I am not working with horses, it's just me due to our COVID restrictions. So you're just going to get the content side of it and the discussions. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So everybody can see that? All right. Okay, so today's, as was mentioned, I'm going to cover a few areas. I'm going to cover some stuff on self-care and give you some tips and tools. I'm going to touch on some points to keep in mind around communication and predictability and stability as we are in chaos for the most part. And then I'm going to touch on just 2 areas of our psychological health and safety standards. So this really is just touching the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more depth that we can cover, but I'm trying to keep this a little bit shorter so that we do have time for questions and answers afterwards. So some area of stress or some amount of stress is actually important for us to be able to perform optimally, and good amounts of stress help us to stay motivated, encourage us to grow and develop. But for the purposes of today's workshop, what I'm talking about when I say stress is actually technically referred to as distress. It's when the amount of stress starts to impact negatively on our ability to perform and manage. And our challenges are increased. So some examples of when stress is good is when you're in a building that's on fire and you need to run out really quickly. You don't use your thinking mind, you just respond, you act, you are in survival mode. Why we have fire drills is because you don't engage your rational thought processes when you're in that level of survival stress. It's the fight and survival. So we need to get out of those high levels of stress to engage our rational brain. Being in survival mode is not where leadership happens, or at least good leadership happens. For the most part, we need to focus on how to move out of that stressful situation and deal with and engage in rational thought. So to do that, you need to manage your stress. If you don't think that managing your stress is important, think about what would be where your organization would be if you were not there. So in most cases, not having a leader, a strong leader in their position would be somewhat chaotic, and it certainly wouldn't be a very seamless transition. So as leaders, you are also the role model for everybody. I think we can all relate to nobody wanting to leave before the boss leaves. You set the tone and your staff team will do as you do, not as you say. Stress is also contagious. We talk about COVID being contagious. Well, stress is just as contagious. It doesn't take long for stress to trickle throughout the organization, and it does tend to trickle from leadership down. In fact, your energy enters the room 10 feet in front of you. You know, we're all very familiar with what that 6-foot bubble looks like for COVID. Just think about how much further that energy bubble is. So if you can impact people 10 feet out based on your emotional status, that's going to have a huge impact and a huge ripple effect. As we all know, particularly these days, stress is cumulative. So the stress you experience in your home life, in your work life, financial stress, all of it, it just keeps building on top of each other. And the tips that I'm going to share with you will actually help not just with your work stress, but stress in other areas of your life. So although stress is cumulative, the good news is that self-care is also cumulative. The last point I want to leave you with around this is the importance of taking care of yourself as a leader and those you lead. To get your organization in good shape, you also need to be in good shape, and the people you support and your team needs to be in good shape. Investing in yourself and your team in your self-care is an investment in your organization. So now I'm going to share 3 self-care tools with you that are fairly easy to do, and I'm sure that they're not new to you, but I'm going to share them in a way that hopefully you'll start integrating. The first piece I want to talk to you about is gratitude. I think everybody's familiar with the idea and the concept of having a journal or a notebook or an agenda and jotting down gratitude, notes around gratitude. It's really important to write it out because there's something that's extra special about physically writing when you're thinking about gratitude and acknowledging things that are going well. One idea might be to write it on a piece of paper or on a Post-it note and put it in a jar. And then at the end of the month, you're able to go through and review all of those things that you're grateful for the whole month. Another option is if you're not really that good about writing things down, you can dictate it into an audio file on your phone. The point is that you need to stop and pause and think about what's really working well. How do you recognize the good things, the good positive pieces, the achievements? So what I'm going to ask people to do as a little exercise right now is use the chat feature and type out something that you're willing to share that you're grateful for right now. And I'm hoping that as we move into the Q&A, Todd will be able to review a few of these and we can share them as well. In any case, although I can't see your chat right now, I expect you'll be able to see each other's chat. So we could maybe start that while I move into the second tool that I want to share with you. So if we can think back to times when we were kids, children, did you ever have a parent or a teacher say to you, I'm going to count to 10? I think most of us have heard that phrase before, and I just want to point out that that is probably one of the most important tools in managing stress in the immediate situation. Gratitude is great, but it does take time and it has to be planned. But when you're in the middle of your emotional upheaval and in the middle of dealing with a stressful situation, being able to sort of count to 10 is key. It's golden. If you remember nothing else from this webinar, remember count to 10. So we're going to do this exercise together. So I want you to start off, if you're sitting down, put your feet on the floor and just be aware of the floor and the chair that you're sitting on and how it's supporting the back of your legs, perhaps supporting your back. If you're standing, be aware of the feeling of the floor, the feeling of your shoes or whatever you're wearing on your feet, and just feel that presence. And now we're going to count to 10. We're going to count to 10 while we breathe because, well, we got to breathe anyways, so let's count while we breathe. So the exercise, we're going to breathe into the count of 4, pause at 5, and breathe out for the rest of the counts. If you'd like to, you can put your hand on your diaphragm, but it's really not necessary. Just sit naturally as you would if you were in a meeting or any other situation where you're on a Zoom call, and just breathe. So we're going to breathe in together, in, 2, 3, 4, pause, out, 7, 8, 9, 10. In again, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause, out, 7, 8, 9, 10. One last time, in, 2, 3, 4, pause, out, 7, 8, 9, 10. So what that has actually done is essentially given our whole brains and our body a hard reboot. It's kind of like when you do that hard reboot on your computer and start it all up again because it's been having problems. That breathing exercise, as simple as it is, actually resets all of those chemicals that are racing around in our brains and in our bodies, preparing us to exit, to run away, to run from that burning building, to fight that grizzly bear or black bear, which is probably actually needed recently if you were in the south end of Barrie. But on a day-to-day basis, when we're working in our work environments, you can't make good decisions when you're in that stress survival mode. The two just do not coexist. You can't be thinking rationally and in a stressed body. So to reset, take those few deep breaths. And the nice thing is that you can do that anytime, anywhere. You can do it when you're stuck in traffic and you're feeling stressed because you're late for a meeting. You can do it before you're going into a meeting or during a meeting where you have to deliver some bad news, something that's, anxiety or stressful. And you can even do it when you're about to give a presentation on Zoom and you're really not 100% comfortable with this type of format. You much rather prefer to be talking to people in person. So being able to do that breathing exercise, it just gets your rational brain in gear. You can't make good decisions. You can't problem solve. You can't think rationally when you are stressed, and neither can your staff team. So it's really important that not only do you do this for yourself, but you help encourage your staff team to do this as well. And nobody even needs to know that you're doing it. You can do this when you're faced with a challenging situation at any time, any place, anywhere. So the last section that I want to talk about, or last tool that I want to give you, is we tend to think of our people as holistic and having multiple components. And this is just a little visual that sort of works to look at the major big chunks of our different areas of being. So I'm going to ask you this, I'm going to be handing out the slides to the chambers so they can share them with you, and you can actually use this as a worksheet if that's helpful for you. But I'm going to ask that everybody touch on all 4 areas, your physical, your mental, your social, and your spiritual being, at least once every single day. Now, I'm sure that you're all going, oh my gosh, something else to do on top of my growing and exceeding to-do list. But if you just look at spending 5 or 10 minutes every day on all 4 areas, at least once, you'll find that it will really help you stay focused and stay more productive the rest of the day. So some of the things that you can do under physical might be, instead of sitting at your desk for hours and hours and hours on end, or your kitchen table, or wherever your workplace happens to be, make sure you get up every hour or 90 minutes and just walk around your office, walk around your area, do a few stretches, go out to the window, take a deep breath of fresh air. Something mental you can do is remember to do that gratitude practice once or twice a day. Remember your breathing exercises. So it doesn't have to be big things, but you do have to do something that's going to touch on each of those areas for 5 minutes every single day. 2 or 3 times a week, you want to be spending about 30 minutes to an hour on each of those areas. And once a week, you want to be spending an hour or more. Now, the good thing is that many of the activities that you're probably going to be thinking of will touch on more than one of those bubbles. For example, going for a walk in a forest definitely has the physical component because you're outside and moving. It has the mental component because you're outside in nature, hopefully listening to the birds, being aware of the different sights and sounds and smells. Probably even being grateful that you have the ability to go out and go for a nice walk in nature. And it probably also touches on the spiritual component, being able to connect with something bigger than yourself, however you define that for yourself, be it nature or a higher power. So doing one thing actually touched on most of those bubbles. For example, even a phone call with a friend definitely has the social component, and it probably has the mental component as well. So you can see how taking care of yourself and taking this pause will actually go a long way to supporting your mental health, and encouraging your staff team to do the same is also going to help. Stress is contagious, as I said before, and it does trickle down. So as a leader, you need to set the example for your staff team. You need to ensure that you're in the best possible state to deal with this increased stress and anxiety as we move forward. And you need to make sure that your team is also in their best shape. So moving into communication, I think we're all familiar with the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, and how. I'm just going to give you a little bit more information on stuff that's best practices as we are dealing with the current situation. I'm sure you've all heard, make sure you get the information from reliable sources, government sources, public health, trade associations, your legal, financial, insurance partners. You're going to have the best information to be able to make the best decisions with the information you have at that particular point in time. Nobody's got a crystal ball, and I think we're all starting to become aware of the fact that information changes rapidly. The information that you have today might be changed by tomorrow. So you can't go second guessing yourself, nor can you go second guessing the decisions made by your staff team. Understand that they are going to be making the best decisions with the information that they have as well. And understand that you're not going to be functioning at 100% every day. That's not realistic with the stress that we have going on, and the anxiety and the fears. Understand that you might be at 70%, and your team might be at 70%, or even 50 or 60, and that has to be okay. You're going to be doing the best you can with the resources you have at that moment. So knowing that you're going to be making mistakes in your decision making because the situation changes, facts change, information changes. You're not an expert in COVID. Nobody on your staff team is an expert in COVID, and all of the changes that that brings. So make sure that you communicate the intentions behind why you're making the decisions, and the goals and objectives behind the decisions that you're making. It's a lot easier to forgive mistakes and bad decisions if people understand the intentions behind them. This is not the time to be the leader, the infallible heroic leader. Sorry, stumbling over that. You need to show your humanity. Be a human. Be open to being vulnerable and to making mistakes. If you show that you have integrity behind the decisions that you're making, it's easy to forgive bad decisions and you won't be second guessing yourself. Make sure that everybody has the right information at the right time and can access it, whether that be your staff team, your customers or clients, or other stakeholders. Make sure that they are able to get it in a format that's accessible. A lot of what we're depending on now is communication through internet and computer-based technologies. Understand that not everybody has that, particularly some of your customers and other stakeholders might not be able to access the information. You also need to make sure that the timing is appropriate. So your staff need to know what decisions are being made and information that's going out to your clients and other stakeholders before the clients and stakeholders get that. So that's another piece just to help sort things out and help things run smoothly. Understanding the purpose of the communication is also very important. You know, the communication and the tone need to be consistent. So when you're communicating information, it needs to be factual and short. When you're building relationships, it needs to be a different type of message. When we're stressed, we can only process very small pieces of information. So make sure that any communication that goes out is only on one topic per message. And make sure that it's as short and to the point as possible. We won't process more information if it's in longer communications. I also want to talk about the importance of humor. Reader's Digest still has an article in every issue called "Humor is the Best Medicine," and it truly is. I could do a whole webinar just on the importance of humor in health, physical health and mental health. I think most people are familiar that when you have a good laugh, you feel better. So that definitely the connection between humor and mental health is clear for everybody. But what you might not be aware of is humor and having a really good laugh helps build your immune system. And in a time when we are all afraid of making sure our immune system is in top notch, having a really good laugh every day is one really easy way that works very effectively. As a leader, you need to make sure that the communication is two-way. It's not just all information that you are giving your team and it's all one way. You need to make sure that there is open dialogue for people to tell you what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. A good way of doing this is just being curious. How is your team doing? How are they coping? What are they struggling with? What are their fears and concerns? As you start moving towards planning for reopening, or maybe you're already in reopening, what is it that they're struggling with? What are their biggest challenges? The experts are saying that the full economic recovery is going to take 2 to 4 years. So we're in this for the long haul, and supporting open communication and listening will go a long way to building trust and support. It will keep your staff engaged and keep them motivated for the long term. We are all changed as a result of this experience of COVID and closures and everything that comes with it. So when we go back, it's not going to be the same as before. It's going to be different. And we have the opportunity now to create something even better than we had before. So ask your team, what is it that they want? What is it that they envision for the long term? Organizations that do a good job in supporting their teams now are going to be rewarded in the years to come. What you do now as a leader really does matter. When we're talking about keeping safe distances, we need to focus on it being physical isolation, not social isolation. We really need to look at ways, whether you're in a remote office, whether you're back on site, whatever the setting is, you need to recreate those casual conversations or those opportunities to have casual conversations like we did before. So what are the ways that you can recreate that typical water cooler conversation, or that open door office, or the conversations that happen in the lunchroom or the break room? what are the opportunities to reconnect human to human instead of task role to task role? So one idea is to start meetings with an icebreaker, a little story, or something that you can share from how things went over the weekend, what your goals and objectives are, and staying connected with your staff team. Provide opportunities to have open discussions. Perhaps if you can sort out a time when you can have like an open door virtually, or a time when people can call you and just have that quick conversation of, oh, I've got a quick question for you. Or at times that you can be available on Zoom and people can just log in and say, hey, I've got a question around this. You also need to make sure that you're validating the emotions, not only for yourself, but for all of your staff team. People are going to be on a roller coaster of emotions, and this is the time when leaders really need to dig deep into their emotional intelligence skills. If you've got staff that have been laid off during these times and you're looking to start bringing them back on, make sure that they're up to speed on all of the changes and challenges that have occurred. Things have really gone very differently to the last time they were at work. So make sure that they're updated, prepared, and ready to jump in. You're also going to need to be prepared with dealing with survivor guilt. If some of your staff have been paid full-time wages, while some of them have had reduced wages, or some of them have actually been fully laid off. These relationships that you had beforehand need to be recreated and reestablished, and that will take time. Predictability. During times of crisis, there is little that is within our control. So the more things that we can put in place that are routines, new rituals, new ways of doing things, the better. The most important one is making sure that you've got a schedule set out for yourself and for your team members, and recognize that it might not be the same kind of schedule you had beforehand. Whether it be working from home, working on site, blended versions, understand that people now have additional challenges. As we start opening up, we're still faced with the shortage of childcare and elder care. And your staff are going to have to figure out, with your support, how best to manage as we move forward. Transportation is another area. People have been using public transit and are comfortable sitting on the city buses. Transportation is going to be another challenge. People who used to get rides to work with coworkers, not so easy to do these days. So the more stability and the more structure you can put in place up front, the better. A great idea is to develop new ways of checking in. So having daily huddles of 20 to 30 minutes where everybody is on the same conversation, the same call, the same video, and just checking in. What's working well? What are the challenges? What are today's priorities? Knowing that today's priorities aren't the same as yesterday's priorities. Things change very quickly. Your staff team needs to know that you're going to be there for them, that you've got their back, and that you're going to support them however you can. And encourage your staff team to be supportive of each other and share that. So a good way of doing that is to get them to recognize and shout out to others on how they've been supported and things that have worked well for them. The last area I want to touch on is psychological health and safety. These are national standards. They're voluntary right now, but as we know, with government, when something becomes voluntary, it quite often ends up eventually being mandatory. So it's not now, but it's certainly something that, given the climate that we're in, it would be really helpful to familiarize yourself with the standard at some point. Obviously, you've got much higher priorities right now, but if you do have some downtime, psychological health and safety has 13 pillars. 2 of these that I'm going to touch on in this presentation are reward and recognition and physical safety. Our brains are programmed to focus on the negative. It's just how our brains work. And in times of stress, that's magnified. According to research, we need 3 to 5 bits of good information for every 1 bit of bad information that we receive. When we're stressed, frustrated, scared, that ratio expands exponentially. So this goes back to the gratitude exercising the importance of making sure that your team is focused on gratitude and things that are working well. I think we've all had days when we've wanted to just go back to bed and pull the sheets up over our head and hibernate for the day. But somehow we managed to get up, get dressed, join a Zoom meeting, and participate. And that takes a huge amount of courage, and we really need to be recognizing just how much courage that takes. People are faced with doing things over and above what would have been expected or what we would have considered to be normal last year. Nobody's job description talked about having to manage with what we're managing these days. So recognize how much people are going above and beyond, the courage that they're using, and celebrate it. We really need to start and end each work day or each work shift celebrating the positive. Sometimes that's going to be harder to find than others, but even saying, hey, I made it through the day without screaming at anybody, that's a success. Celebrate it as much as you celebrate getting that contract and landing that big account. As far as safety goes, make sure that you communicate everything that you're doing to make sure everybody's safe. Your customers, your staff, other stakeholders, get the message out there as to what you were doing to make people safe. Understand that if you've got third parties coming in, make sure that that you're communicating what they're doing as well. Share that information. When you've got your HR, whether that be in-house HR or external HR, make sure that they're doing the risk assessments for every situation, every setting, every job task, and communicate what needs to be done. Follow your occupational health and safety guidelines and public health guidelines, but do more than that. Don't just do the bare minimum. Go over and above to ensure that you can sleep well at night and your staff team can sleep well at night. So that brings me to the end of my formal presentation. I have a number of resources. I'll just touch on a couple of them very quickly. Most of them are websites. The second point here, Michael Sue Goblet, she is posted on Barrie Families Unite. She's a colleague of mine who is a clinical social worker, and she is currently offering support on a pay what you can basis. So that's a really good resource to know about if you're looking for support. The rest of them are fairly self-explanatory. There's a couple of pages. Business resources, I think we all know about these business resources. And what my company is doing is we're providing complimentary discussions with your leadership team and HR to share some tools and knowledge and opportunities to take an even deeper dive into some of these areas. And that's the end of my formal presentation. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Todd, I think, who's going to be forwarding any questions that we have.
Absolutely. That is great. Thank you very much. Very, very informative. Stress is a tough one with a lot of people, and especially during times like this when it's taken its toll on, your family, your health, your work, everything. So some great little tips and pointers there. So thank you very much. Okay, one question, Sue. On a recommendation for staff meetings, would you recommend to have them at the beginning or end of the week, and is there a difference?
Ideally, I would recommend that staff meetings happen, at least brief ones, on a daily basis. Just a quick check-in. It doesn't have to be long, but just a touch base. People are isolated and scared, and you don't want to risk fears and concerns building over the day or over the week. So ideally, having check-ins, short little huddles every day, either at the beginning or the end of the day, whichever works best for the staff team. And as far as if you have to have like your big in-depth meeting that's going to be like an hour, 90 minutes, something like that, I would just ask your staff team what works best for them. Are they better off touching base at the beginning of the week and having the week laid out for them, or is it better to do it as a wrap up? So go back to the team and ask what's their preference.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Sorry, one of the things that the chamber staff does, and I've sort of just folded myself into their processes, but we have a staff meeting every morning at 9:50 on a Google chat, and then we are on a Google Meet, and then we have an all-day chat function going back and forth. So we're not making phone calls all day long. We can answer questions. You can be directive with it, but it keeps everybody in tune. So in the morning, it's, you know, it's like a coffee and you talk about what's going on with the day and the kids are running around, and then it's, you push it aside and get down to business. But it's been very effective in keeping us in line and keeping those stress levels down. So that's a great tip, Sue. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely one of the best practices is, you know, we're not in the same office where you would just, you know, walk into somebody's door and sort of say, hey, do you have a minute? So what can we do virtually as a substitute?
Yeah, so that's a great segue to the next question because you've partially answered it. So is there a best practice for keeping your team connected through keeping physical distance, aka team meetings, team building, etc.?
Yeah, being creative. As I said, the use of humor is really important. And even though you're in a 6-foot physical bubble, you've got that 10-foot energy bubble. So making sure that you've got opportunities to have conversations. You know, do you have a meeting room that's big enough where people can be physically safe and be in the same room? That's probably not the opportunity for most business locations. So making sure that you have the technology to stay connected. The more often, the more frequent. Paul's idea at the chamber is an excellent example of things to put in place.
Okay, alrighty, next up. How do I speak to my manager about the stress/distress I feel right now? I don't want to make them think that I'm unstable or unreliable and possibly lose my job.
Yeah, ideally the leaders would be on this so they would hear this.
Yeah.
So I think that, yes, having those open conversations and starting the preface with, you know, we're all stressed, we're all experiencing this. One of the things that I didn't touch on is that employers do have a duty to accommodate to the point of undue stress, and that's part of the regulations under occupational health and safety. And the powers that be and the experts in the field now, although we don't have any cases, any case law on this, there is generally the understanding that accommodating stress and anxiety related to returning to work is something that they do need to look at and think about. And I would suggest that the person check out some of those resources that I posted in the resource slides. But also just sort of asking for an open conversation, saying, like, I'm not expecting you to fix my challenges. I'm not expecting you to solve my anxiety, but I do need to talk about where my concerns are and things that we can put in place that might help make me feel more secure. For example, you know, maybe coming into the office at a time when there's less people going to be there. So working, you know, shifting hours to come in the evening if you have to be on site. What are the opportunities to continue working remotely if that is an option? And just exploring what is it that you really want that will make you feel more comfortable, and then communicating that in a respectful way, knowing that, you know, there are limits to what employers can and what's within their control, but having that dialogue and that discussion. And it is normal to feel anxious and scared. But if it starts to become a point where it's continuous or where it's really impacting your ability to function on a daily basis, then you probably should be checking out some of those resources, talking to a counselor or your physician to get more support. We're all really stressed and we're all going through some really big changes now.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're getting that a lot from both sides, from the employer and the employee's perspective, and you have to absolutely understand both. I mean, as an employer, you obviously need your staff there. As an employee, they absolutely have the right to a safe work environment. And right now, the regulation is that your employer certainly has to provide you with that safe environment. And for anybody out there that's listening, you know, you have the right and you actually have the obligation to speak to your employer to see what safe practices they've put in place to make sure that you are coming back to a safe environment. And then if you still feel that it's unsafe, you or your employer has the right to call the ministry. The ministry will come in and investigate. And then stress is funny because it's not really covered under a whole lot of different things there. You're right, it's one of those gray areas. So, you know, with employers, they're doing their best to make sure that they're giving you a safe environment. And I think you're right. Like if you think I can't go back to work, I just can't be around people, perhaps counseling or something like that, because you've also got to look at both perspectives as an employer. I need you here. I want you here, and I need you to function and be functionable, but I also want you to be comfortable in your work environment. So it's a tough wait for both sides, because I know a lot of employers out there saying to their employees, we want you back. And some employees are going, I'm just not comfortable. But it's like, do you want a job to go back to? The business needs to be there. And a business is trying, like you said, businesses are trying to reopen. They're trying to rebound. They're trying to do what they can. And, heaven forbid, but if there's a second wave of this, I don't know what would happen. So, businesses, as soon as the government allows them to open, they need to do so, but they absolutely have to do it in as safe a manner as possible.
And that goes
Yep, go
back
ahead.
to the two-way communication. What you need to, as a leader, you need to make sure that you're using all of that emotional intelligence piece. So hearing what people are saying, not judging, accepting that emotions are emotions, and anxiety is anxiety, and fear is fear.
Yeah.
And then sort of going from there, do your deep breathing so you're not taking this personally. It's just a conversation, and look for ways that you can actually solve, because everybody wants to get back to work. Everybody wants to have a job. Everybody wants their organization to be successful and is doing the best that they can. So if you start from that premise, it does make it a little easier. But yeah, there's going to be challenges, and the more we can talk about them openly, the better.
Yeah, because it is difficult. We know some employers here in town that have reached out to us and said, the majority of the employees have come back and they're comfortable. It's a safe work environment, this and that. And then others that I'm not comfortable, I can't come back, and they're stressed. And the employer is saying, like, what do I do? We have all these employees here that honestly believe that this is a safe work environment and they are back working. How do we regulate this? And I know you or I can't answer that. It's certainly something that is happening out there, and it's a difficult situation for both sides. So.
Yeah, and so I would recommend going through those resources and checking out. Some of them are specific to COVID, and some of them are just general workplace stress.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, do you have any tips for communicating difficult topics such as layoffs, hour reductions, or possible closures?
That goes back to the concept of making sure that your decisions are based on good intentions and being authentic on that. Yes, the reality is that there are some businesses who are going to have to close and lay off people. People don't want to be lied to, for sure. So make sure that you are giving them accurate information. Don't go promising them stuff that you can't deliver. Say that you're concerned about, these are the challenges. This is the reality. Unfortunately, not all of you are going to be coming back. And we're going to do the best we can to put you in the best possible situation. There are government programs out there, making sure that you connect them with whatever resources are out there. And then look to, having a good employee assistance program if you can afford it. If you don't have an employee assistance program, look at some of those free resources and make sure people are connected and supported as they transition out. But yeah, the reality is that, yeah, it's tough out there. Not everybody's surviving.
Yeah, and it's true. We had a comment, and I posted a while ago. It was from a lawyer out of Toronto, a labor lawyer, and it was stating that basically, if you have a safe work environment, it's deemed a safe work environment. Then in their opinion, if you refuse to go back to work, it's deemed as a resignation. So the only other option is, again, if you think it's an unsafe work environment, you call the ministry, and it's within your rights, and you absolutely should call the ministry to ensure that your health and safety comes first. But there's that gray area there that lawyers are already looking at, going, if it's a safe work environment, you can't really refuse to go back. So it's, there's the odd exception. If you're caring for an elderly person at home, somebody that has a compromised immune system. I mean, there's different rules and sidelines to everything out there, but this was this person's professional opinion, a well-respected lawyer, and it was just like, wow, it almost seems a little over the top. But I guess the other side too is, if you're trying to encompass an office and say, we need to survive here, if we don't get back to work, there will be no business. What is the lesser of two evils? So it's tough.
The only thing I would caution with that is that mental health is a diagnosis, if somebody gets diagnosed with a mental health illness as a result of COVID, there is a duty to accommodate by the employer.
Absolutely.
So if you're not sure if you have a mental health issue or if you are just dealing with everyday kind of stress, there is a difference. So that's why I suggest if you're struggling with going back to work when all of your coworkers are okay and it's not a childcare transportation issue, seek counseling, get some support, and take it from there. You know, the medical authorities will be able to tell you what you know, if you do qualify as having a disability, then that needs to be accommodated, which is a completely different story than just,
yes.
I'm enjoying the time off and I don't really want to have to go back to work.
Well, and we've had that with some employers too, with the CERB, where, you know, some employers are just saying, like, it's summertime and I'm getting $500 a week, and you know what, I think I'd rather stay off. So, you know, there's some employers that actually, without any question, know that's a fact, and they're getting a bit of the gears. And then others are absolutely legitimate, like you're saying, where it's fears. But we even had one of the people on a Zoom meeting recently saying that, you know, they had some employees that were fearful and refused to come back while others did. And then they post a video of them with 20 people in their backyard. Not the smartest thing you should be doing or could be doing.
Yeah.
It's like
how strong is that fear of being with other
people, and then you have 20 people in your backyard? It's like, wow. Yeah. All right, next one up. How do you address the different humor styles on your team? And how do you rein it in if it starts to become unprofessional or even inappropriate without losing the team connection and trust?
Yeah, absolutely. Humor is definitely a personal taste for sure. But you need to make sure that it is workplace appropriate, number one, and is not going to be singling out any particular person or group of people. So that's kind of like laying down the groundwork. If you know your team and you've got open communication, you're going to know where some people may have some more sensitive issues. Basically anything that makes fun of somebody is you know, off the table, or any group of people. So yeah, you do need to, as a leader, rein it in. You know, there's difference between, you know, posting funny memes about, you know, song lyrics with COVID content versus something that might be a little bit more provocative or sensitive. So yeah, just, you know, base it on your team, base it on good taste. And, you know, one of the things that you could do is have the you know, the worst dad joke as a way of having a competition, and, you know, keep it clean, keep it light, keep it whatever, you know. But yeah, it goes without saying that you have to have all of your Human Rights Commission and politically sensitive content overshadowing those comments.
Okay. Next one is lengthy, so be prepared.
Oh dear.
Take it all in. Getting old here. Our previous manager was not a good communicator and actively discouraged our team from being friendly with humor and conversation, not specifically related to the task at hand. We have new leadership now that is significantly better, but we are still having challenges connecting as a team because we all have that memory of being reprimanded for chatting. Do you have any strategies for getting past these memories so that we can function better as a team?
Time and practice. Yeah, I know that, you know, there's a whole other area of, you know, the toxic boss, toxic work situation that's over and above what we can talk about in today's session. But I think that just, you know, building those team connections, having relationships. So when you're in a meeting, you know, being able to talk about what you did on the weekend, talk about your kids, talk about something funny that your pets did, and just building that in, and take time to share. And if your manager is open to having those daily meetings, those daily check-ins, and really celebrating successes, success could be in your personal life as well as your professional life. And just building that rapport and getting to know each other as people, including the boss. The boss is a person too. So just making sure that you develop those relationships, and it will come with time. Unfortunately, the timing of those transitions with our physical distancing is a challenge, but I'm sure it will come. Just, be patient and optimistic.
Excellent. Okay, Sue, to be respectful of your time and others, we're going to send it back to you for closing comments.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being able to share this. And if you do have more questions, my contact information is available. So I'm willing to chat and talk further if that's something that would be helpful for you. And check out those resources, and we'll get through this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Sue. So yeah, we really appreciate you talking to us today, taking the time. And I don't know, Paul was online with you prior to me getting finally logged in here. We have a tremendous amount of people that watch these Zoom calls and conference calls after. The pickup is incredible. We're averaging like 300 or more. And
wow.
Yeah, some of the businesses that Paul and I have been online talking to, the actual presidents and CEOs and that are saying, if they have time, they try and participate, but typically now they're so busy reopening, re-engaging, they don't have the time. But they were telling us that themselves, along with their managers and other people, are absolutely watching every single call we do at some point during the week. They're watching the replay of it. The chamber posted online. So this information is tremendous, and it's very timely. Everybody out there needs some guidance. Everybody has a little fear, a little anxiety from all different perspectives. So again, thank you very much, Sue. This was great and very helpful.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So in closing, I'd like to thank everybody again for joining us and for the work you're doing in your businesses every day. We urge every leader in our community to maintain their focus on slowing the pace of the transmission of this COVID-19. Whatever stage of operations your business may be currently in. The Barrie Chamber and the Sandbox like to thank you for being here and supporting us. And if there's anything that you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. We'll get your questions answered or any concerns answered. Also, we implore, as always, everybody to shop local where possible. Our local businesses need your help more than ever. I mean, we've always needed, they've always needed your support, but now more than ever, whenever you can shop local, whether you're physically shopping, whether you're buying a gift card, whether you're going online, but shop local as much as possible to ensure that these businesses are here for all of us in the future. And lastly, as our province takes steps towards the reopening of different sectors, please ensure that you continue to follow the social distancing requirements and take them seriously. The safety of our community is the responsibility of all of us collectively. And with that, I wish everybody a great day.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. Take care.
Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.